Aloha, I'm Yenji Denise. Welcome to Get Your House in Order, the show where we help you take care of the things that matter most. In this series, we cover a wide range of topics from health and wellness to financial readiness and preparing for every phase of life. The majority of American adults take at least one prescription medication, and as we age, the number of drugs we take regularly tends to increase. In fact, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation, more than half of seniors take 4 or more medications. So how do we safely manage all those drugs? That's what we're focusing on today. As always, I'm joined by Paulette Ito of Hawaiian Financial Federal Credit Union. So Paulette, how does medication management fit into Get Your House in Order?
Get Your House in Order is the program to get yourself prepared and well organized. And knowing your prescription medication is very important, making sure your doctors know about them, your pharmacists, and even your loved ones. So this is very important.
Yeah, and let's talk about the broader Get Your House in Order initiative. This is really about sort of organizing your life from A to Z.
Yes, and it's not just about financial wellness because, you know, we are a financial institution, but it's your mental wellness, your physical wellness, as well as your spiritual wellness.
And why did, you acknowledge that you're a financial institution. Why would a financial institution take on this kind of initiative?
Because we know that there's a direct correlation to your physical health to your financial wellness, your mental health to your financial wellness. So we want to make sure that we touch all aspects of it so that you can thrive and be, a good contributor to our society.
Where can people find more, and tell us about the resources that you've put together for this campaign?
They can go to our website, it's hificu.com, and they can come to our landing page there where we have all the different resources and links for them to get their house in order.
Yeah, and tell us about the guidebooks.
The guidebook, yes. We have our second guidebook out, Ho'okele 1.2. We had Ho'okele 1.1. That's now available. If you subscribed to the guidebook, you would have gotten a link to let you know that the second guidebook came out. And we'll be having 2 more coming out in just, in the next quarter.
And what's covered in the first versus the second? Because we're very familiar with the first guidebook. Tell us about 1.2.
1.2 is the present, things that are happening now in your life, things that you have, such as your auto insurance, your life insurance, health directives, your financial information, your investments, stocks, anything that you have that's present should be documented in that guidebook.
Okay, time to download and get started.
Okay. Absolutely. Start now. Start today.
Thank you, Paulette. We're going to be speaking with a pharmacy director about how to make sure you or the people you may be caring for are properly managing all those medications. First now, let's hear from someone who knows firsthand why keeping track of this is so important.
Aloha, my name is Reese and I'm from Kailua, and this is my story. When I was 10, I was diagnosed with cancer, specifically brain cancer, and then from then on, I had a bunch of pills to take, like every day. Currently, I'm taking around 10 pills a day, which roughly equates to 3,500 pills a year. And so it's a lot of pills to kind of remember and to keep track of. When I was young, my mom used to fill out all my pill containers, so I'd have equal doses. However, when I got older, I figured I should just do it by myself. But filling out pill containers is kind of a chore, and so I kind of skipped over a couple. And one time I actually had 2 pills in one, so I kind of took too much of a dose. And then I felt really sick, felt really tired, and I didn't know why. But my mom, since she knows all of my medications and all my pills, she was able to figure out that I took too much of this one pill, and she contacted a doctor who gave her signs and symptoms and what to watch out for and just to monitor me. Because of that, she knew if I was okay or not. Since that incident, I now have an entire paper full of every medication I'm taking, what to look out for, the signs and symptoms, and generally who to contact, such as my doctor, my physician, or the ER or anything like that. And my mom also has a copy of it, so if I am unable to function or I can't remember or anything like that, she can figure out for my symptoms what I took too much of or too little of. One thing I'd also recommend is to have all your medications consolidated to one pharmacy. And so they can tell you if one medication interacts with the other, if it inhibits or enhances, just to make sure even if you're taking the right dose, because you're taking another drug, it might amplify it to make you go over the limit. And I would also have a pill list and give it to every doctor just to see if you're taking everything or they prescribe you a new medication, if you can take it or not.
For all your money needs, Hawaiian Financial Federal Credit Union is here for you. Visit hificu.com.
Welcome back. I'm joined now by Rain Shoji, a practicing pharmacist for more than 20 years with experience in a range of medical settings. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So I think for a lot of us, we take so many prescriptions and we tend to forget all the drugs we're taking or why we started taking them in the first place. What is the biggest mistake you see people make with their pharmaceuticals?
I think overlapping supplements, if you take, say, a B complex and you take a multivite, you got multiple vitamins that overlap. I think that's probably most common. Outside of that, I think doctors and pharmacists work together so that you don't have a whole lot of interactions with the medication. So it's pretty safe as long as your pharmacist and your doctor are all on the same page, that you know which drugs you're on. So it does help to go to the same pharmacy. Does help to have a running list of medications that you have on hand. If you go to a new pharmacy, you can show them that list of all of the medications you're on. So that really helps to avoid any type of adverse drug reactions or overlapping therapies that somebody might have missed.
You know, and what's interesting is you brought up vitamins and B complex. These are things that you can just buy over the counter. And we tend to think with supplements sometimes, oh, well, it doesn't hurt me to have that much extra of whatever the medication may be. What are some of the risks of that, or what would you say to folks?
I think the best thing to do is really pick the bottle up, take a look at it, see if there are overlapping vitamins that, may be in one and the other. And that's really the best you can do. Ask your doctor or your pharmacist, is this going to cause any type of interactions with the medications I'm on? Again, really having vitamins included in the list is important and not forgetting them.
Right. Yeah. And going back to what I brought up at the beginning, we start to take something and we've forgotten where we take it, but we have it on an auto refill. How often do you think you should sort of review yourself, if you will, take stock of what you're taking and do I really need this?
I think it's always good to take responsibility for your own health and what drug you're taking for what condition. Typically, most individuals go in to see their doctor at least annually. Sometimes you might go quarterly if it's a specialist, right? So going over that list with your doctor is always at the front of the appointment. So that's the time where you ask questions if you don't know what the drug was for. And I think that's important. Just taking it upon yourself to take the initiative to be your own advocate is really important.
And if you're not monitoring the potential, for those interactions, maybe you haven't shared that information with your doctor or your pharmacist, what are some of the ramifications of that?
It can range. I mean, it could be something as minor as a headache, drowsiness, nausea in some cases, but it could be as severe as hypoglycemia. Right? When you have low blood sugar, taking a drug that lowers your blood sugar, right? And you may have added one on not knowing that this drug also does that. So it could be as severe as that where you end up landing in the hospital. So it's really important to keep track, know which drugs you have on board, which drugs you should be stopping and changing over to the new drug you started. So that's really important to understand. When you leave the doctor's office, if you have any questions whatsoever, that should be what you ask.
Right, and if you've missed that at the doctor's, presumably you can do that at the pharmacy as well. I like this idea of bringing your list. I wouldn't necessarily want to trouble my pharmacist with that. What kind of information do they have about interactions available to them? It sounds like, that's what really they're trained to do.
Yes, absolutely. So the software that's in most pharmacy systems identifies your major interactions. If they don't have all of your prescriptions, that's where it gets really tricky. If you say you go to Long's for your blood pressure medication, your diabetes medication, your asthma medication, and they say you go to Costco for your blood clotting agents, something of that nature, right? They're not going to have all of that information. So it's really important that if you do decide to go to different pharmacies, that you share with them that they can put on your profile that I take these other drugs, but I don't come to your pharmacy for that. So then that way the software can pick up any type of interactions. The pharmacist that is checking your prescription will be alerted to interactions and they can put two and two together and have a profile of what you're taking. That'd probably be the best safety net.
And some of the interactions that you were talking about and the consequences, they would be noticeable: headache, But
Sure.
some of there could be other things that you don't see, correct?
Sure, sure. You could see things, I mentioned the low blood pressure or low blood sugar, right? You don't necessarily see them. Sometimes you feel them a little bit, but you would need to either draw blood or you would need to evaluate yourself with your doctor to see, you know, what's going on internally, right? Yeah, you're right. Sometimes you won't see those things. So it's best to stay on top of things and understand if you can't keep track of them, hopefully you have somebody that can help keep track of what you're on and notice changes, you know, from day to day that you normally don't see in that individual. So that really helps.
Okay, our conversation is just getting started. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Basics. Visiting the same pharmacy helps minimize overlapping or conflicting medications, supplements, and vitamins. Making a list of all your medications and supplements and then sharing that list with your doctors and pharmacists is a good step in taking personal responsibility for your medications. Audit your medications. Annual doctor's visits are a great time to check in on all your medications. Bring your list to all doctor visits and be your own advocate by knowing all about your medications. Risks. Some conflicting medications can cause severe adverse reactions, and not all adverse reactions produce noticeable symptoms. Pharmacists use software to help identify medication conflicts, so always ask your doctor or pharmacist when in doubt. Visiting several different pharmacies raises the risk of conflicts.
Long's Drugs is always here for Hawaii, providing your family with their local favorites, accessible health and wellness services to keep you safe and healthy. Make Long's a part of your day.
Welcome back. We are speaking today with Rain Shoji, a pharmacist for more than 20 years now working as a pharmacy director. Let's talk about those potential interactions. If you flagged that, do you necessarily need to stop taking those medications? Is that always necessary, or can you like let's say you're treating something and you're just going to take medications for a short time? Is that okay to sustain some of those interactions, or is that an absolute no-no?
I think it varies. You definitely want to talk to your doctor if you do experience some sort of adverse drug reaction when you start something new. A lot of times they tell you before you start taking, say, a course of antibiotics to avoid taking calcium products, avoid taking certain type of supplements, right, that it interacts with the antibiotics. So stop taking it for those 10 to 14 days that you're going to be on the antibiotics. So it depends. I think really stopping the medication completely is something I'd not recommend doing. Obviously, if it becomes something severe enough to go to the emergency room, then you would need to stop it. But always communicating with your doctor. Pharmacist as a secondary option if your doctor's office is not open, to say, hey, I'm struggling with something, I started feeling weird. Be in communication with your doctor and don't stop your medication abruptly.
Yeah, and that brings us to another interesting point, which is when to stop taking a medicine. They always tell you antibiotics are a great example where you want to complete the course, but 5 days later, I feel better, I don't need this anymore.
Absolutely, that's always a misconception, that you feel better in 2 to 3 days, and that's really what happens because your body starts to get that help from the antibiotic, so you can fight off whatever infection that is making you feel really terrible, right? But completing the course is important because what ends up happening is that particular bug that you're treating and trying to fight will become resistant to the antibiotic if you stop short. So it's really important to complete it. Definitely don't save that antibiotic for later when you feel the same because it might be a different bug. That's really important for the life of the particular drug that you're using, right? And resistance doesn't become a problem.
Yeah, and how important is it to follow the instructions that come with the drug? Because often it says, take with food, or take it this time of day, or that time of day, but you've forgotten, or you don't feel like eating anything, or you don't have an empty stomach, and it says take on an empty stomach. How do you prioritize all of those different
Absolutely,
protocols?
great question. Yeah, I think what I tell my patients and customers is, if it helps you to remember, then take it that same time of day every day. There are certain restrictions when it comes to taking it twice a day, every 12 hours. It's better for you to take it when you remember than not take it at all because you missed that window, right? So I really encourage patients and customers to always follow the directions as best as they can, but don't not take it because you missed and you forgot.
Okay, and let's talk about what happens when you have drugs left over, right? A lot of us have medicine cabinets. We have pills that may be expiring, or we just want to save it for what you're talking about. Oh, if I get sick again, I don't have to call the doctor. What is your best advice with how to handle medications that you have that you're not actually taking anymore?
Sure, great. That's another great question. I think a lot of times we take it for granted that nobody's going to touch those medications that are sitting on the counter, but it's really important that if you're no longer using it, first and foremost, pharmacies can take those back. You can always call your pharmacy, that neighborhood pharmacy, say, do you have a take back day? They have those days where they take back prescriptions, vitamins, whatever it may be. I'd highly encourage you not to flush it down the toilet. Throw it into your trash. There are products out there that you can use that you add it to the vitamin prescription drug vial, and you add a little bit of water, and it renders the drug inert, and then you can throw it in the trash can. But that's usually for small quantities. But large quantities, highly encourage you to go to your pharmacy, ask. There are drop boxes that are I think most of the police stations have them. So on all islands, there are drop boxes that are funded by the state. No questions asked, you just drop it in there, and they'll dispose of it properly.
Great advice. We know that medication management is important not just for ourselves, but also in caring for the people that we love. We're going to give tips to caregivers. That's after the break.
Stopping medications. Feeling better is not a sign to stop taking prescribed medication. You should never stop taking a prescribed medication until the cycle is complete. Never save unused portions of a medication in case symptoms return. Contact your doctor or pharmacist as soon as possible if any kind of adverse reaction occurs.
Windows Hawaii. Trust Windows Hawaii.
Welcome back. Pharmacist Rain Shoji is joining us today. Let's talk about how we manage medication for others. We may have children that we care for, or perhaps elderly relatives, and in some cases you don't necessarily live with that person. You stop by a few times a week.
Sure.
How do you help to manage those medications when it's not necessarily just for yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Great question. I think one of the first things I always recommend is that, again, having that list somewhere on the refrigerator. Sometimes some people roll it up in a vial, put it in the freezer, because if EMS comes and they want to help you, they don't know what medications you're on, it's really absolutely integral that you have that list somewhere. I think pill organizers are really great. There's phone apps now that remind you when you take your medication, or have it organized for you. So you can use any one of those things to help you to remember, and help caregivers help you to remember. But the pill organizers are actually pretty great. It varies from just a Monday through Sunday one where you have little compartments. You guys have probably seen those. Or it even have reminders, like it'll print out some sort of reminder and have an alert. It'll blink, it'll change colors. Some pharmacies offer compliance packaging where they put in these little packets, and it'll tell you morning, evening. It'll tell you which drug, when you're supposed to take it, just like a regular vial. So there's a lot of options out there that people can take advantage of, caregivers can use to help their loved ones stay on track with their medications.
Yeah, and what do you say to folks who are caregiving and they may notice something might be off with their loved one? They suspect medication, but perhaps that person is aging and maybe they attribute it to another ailment that they have. You're not in that body.
Right,
so how do you know
right.
If it's a drug interaction or something else?
I think there's no real science to it. I think it's observation of the individual that you know. And if it is something that's out of the ordinary, that you should ask, their doctor, or you should take them in to see, is there something that I need to be concerned about? I don't think there's really one clear answer on that's an adverse drug reaction and you need to do something about it. So.
Let's talk briefly about going on a trip. If you're, a lot of us are getting back out there and traveling again. It's not always easy to fill prescriptions on the road, but pharmacies do have limits in terms of how much drug you can actually bring with you or receive at any one time. How do you manage that?
I think being prepared. So if you know you're leaving for a trip, 2 weeks ahead, find out if you have extra refills. There's always a way to get additional vacation supplies that your health insurance companies will authorize. So working with your doctor to get that vacation supply is really important. Not to leave home on your trip without that supply is really important.
You know, what you've described in the course of our conversation is the pharmacist really being an integral part of your life in this medication management as well. I think a lot of us don't tend to think of a pharmacist in the caregiving way, like what you're describing. When we're choosing a pharmacist, you know, how do we go about doing that so that we can have the kind of relationship you're talking about? It seems like it would be great to have someone else also looking out for us in that way.
Sure. Yeah, I think whichever pharmacy you build a rapport with, the staff, the pharmacist, I'd stick with them. If you find that you're not getting the rapport and the service and no one's really paying attention to you coming in and out of the store, I think maybe it's time to change to a different pharmacy that's, you know, more convenient for you or is better at being aware of your medications. And you can always advise your doctor, I wanted to go to this one pharmacy, they can fax it there. And those would be probably the two things that I recommend as far as choosing your pharmacy.
Yeah, and throughout you really emphasize just having one central place, not having pharmacies all over town. Why is, again, reiterate why that's so important?
I think the first and foremost, pharmacies don't share information across from one pharmacy. You might have information shared between one chain pharmacy, but if you go to a different chain pharmacy, they're not going to have your information. So it's really important that they have all of your information in their system to avoid any type of interactions or adverse drug reactions.
Okay, and before we go, what's your best advice for making sure that you manage your medications appropriately?
I think being your own advocate, knowing what you take your medications for which conditions, when you take it, how you're supposed to take it, and most of all, being adherent to your medications.
Yeah, really empowering ourselves with that list.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for being here. We learned so much. Time to take a good look at your medicine cabinet and really take stock of what we're all taking. Remember, you can review this show or watch it again by finding us on YouTube, listen as a podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Yunji Denise. Until next time, take care of yourself and aloha.